I am beyond grateful for it all, my God.
Why Solomon felt empty. Near the end of his life, Solomon stood on a balcony overlooking Jerusalem. Below him, torchlight flickered against walls lined with gold. Music drifted through the palace courts. The city breathed with the kind of peace most kings spend their entire lives trying to achieve. And for a moment, he looked at everything he built and felt nothing. Not gratitude, not wonder, not joy, just distance. Imagine that. Spending your whole life climbing towards something, only to arrive there emotionally absent. That was Solomon, a man who possessed almost everything people dream about, while quietly losing the ability to feel alive inside it. The kind of emptiness nobody talks about. Most people think emptiness comes after loss, after grief, after failure, after life falls apart. But some emptiness arrives when everything appears to be working. That's what makes Solomon unsettling. His life looked blessed from the outside: power, wisdom, pleasure, admiration. He had reached the level of existence people secretly believe will finally make them feel complete. And still, Ecclesiastes reads like the journal of someone emotionally exhausted. Not dramatic, not unstable, just tired in the deepest part of himself. The kind of tired sleep cannot fix. I think a lot of people know that feeling now. The exhaustion of constantly consuming, achieving, performing, while something essential quietly disappears underneath all of it. Before the drift. What makes Solomon tragic is that he did not begin corrupted, he began sincere. When he first became king, he was young enough to know he wasn't ready. That humility mattered. Because when God asked him what he wanted, Solomon didn't ask for wealth or power. He asked for wisdom, for discernment, for the ability to lead people well. There's something deeply human about that moment. A young man terrified of becoming dangerous with power, and for a while his heart stayed close to God. Jerusalem flourished under him. Nations traveled impossible distances just to hear him speak. His wisdom became legendary because people sensed something honest inside him. But success changes people slowly, not all at once. A person rarely notices the exact moment they begin drifting from themselves. It happens gradually, one compromise justified, one appetite fed too often, one distraction repeated until it becomes identity, and eventually the soul adapts to things it once feared. The human mind was never built for endless excess. At first, pleasure feels alive because it arrives with contrast. But when every desire becomes immediately available, desire itself begins to decay. That's what happened to Solomon. The palace expanded, the pleasures multiplied, the celebrations grew louder, and still something inside him remained untouched. Because once wonder disappears, people stop searching for meaning and start searching for intensity. That line explains more modern suffering than people realize. Some people no longer know how to sit quietly with themselves, so they stay stimulated, always scrolling, always consuming, always chasing the next experience strong enough to interrupt the silence. But eventually the silence returns. It always returns. And when it does, people are forced to confront the possibility that their life looks full, while their soul feels abandoned. There's a detail about Solomon people rarely think about. He built the temple of God, and later filled his life with hundreds of other things. Hundreds. Relationships became accumulation. Pleasure became distraction. Wisdom became observation without intimacy. And I think somewhere deep down, Solomon knew exactly what was happening to him. Because Ecclesiastes does not sound like a man discovering truth. It sounds like a man admitting truth he spent years trying to outrun. Meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. People hear those words and think despair, but honestly, it sounds more like grief. The grief of realizing nothing on earth can carry the weight you placed on it. Not success, not pleasure, not recognition, not even wisdom itself. And maybe the saddest part is this: the world would still have called Solomon successful while he was emotionally collapsing inside. That happens every day now. People applaud lives they do not understand. Some people watching this know exactly what that feels like. You achieve the thing you thought would heal you, the relationship, the career, the recognition. And afterward, there's this strange silence nobody prepared you for. Because disappointment after failure is understandable, but disappointment after success feels isolating. You start wondering if something is wrong with you. Why am I still restless? Why do I still feel disconnected? Why does none of this feel the way I imagined it would? So people hide it. They keep functioning, keep smiling, keep posting, keep producing, while internally they feel themselves becoming harder to reach. That's the frightening thing about spiritual emptiness. It does not always destroy your life externally first. Sometimes it simply removes your ability to feel present inside it. I think Solomon eventually discovered something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The soul cannot survive on substitutes. Not because pleasure is evil, not because success is meaningless, but because temporary things make terrible gods. The human soul always asks for more than the world can provide: more permanence, more peace, more meaning, more eternity. And when people try to satisfy eternal hunger with temporary things, life slowly begins feeling emotionally unreal. That was Solomon's real suffering. Not lack, distance. Distance from the God who once made even simple things feel alive. And the farther he drifted from that presence, the heavier everything else became. Maybe that's why Solomon's story still feels painfully modern. Because people are still exhausting themselves trying to fill spiritual hunger with visible success. Still hoping achievement will silence the ache. Still terrified that after all the chasing, they might finally arrive somewhere and discover they are still empty. But maybe emptiness is not always punishment. Maybe sometimes it is the soul refusing to keep lying, refusing to pretend substitutes are enough. And maybe Solomon's greatest wisdom was not found in the years he looked powerful, but in the moment he finally understood this. Nothing in this world was ever meant to carry the weight of your soul. Not money, not admiration, not pleasure, not achievement. Only God. And maybe that is why, near the end of his life, surrounded by gold and greatness and everything people spend their lives envying, Solomon stood there feeling the unbearable distance between having everything and having peace. And maybe that is why Solomon's story still matters now more than ever. Because the world is still teaching people to gain everything while quietly losing their souls. But Scripture keeps repeating the same truth generation after generation. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Maybe that verse was never just a warning. Maybe it was mercy, because God was trying to save people from spending their entire lives chasing things that could never love them back. And maybe some people watching this already feel that exhaustion, the exhaustion of trying to be enough, successful enough, desired enough, important enough, only to realize the hunger keeps returning. But the beautiful thing about God is this: He does not wait for people to become perfect before calling them back. He met Solomon in wisdom, David in failure, Elijah in exhaustion, Peter in shame, and maybe he is meeting someone here in emptiness. Because sometimes the moment a person finally admits, I cannot keep living like this, is the exact moment transformation begins. So if any part of Solomon's story felt personal, don't ignore that. Maybe your soul is not collapsing, maybe it is waking up. And I want to ask you something honestly. What have you been chasing, hoping it would finally give you peace? Because sometimes the first step back to God is finally becoming honest about what replaced Him.